All right, so it's already, this recording has started. During the anytime in the next couple of hours, if the connection is not good or something goes wrong, please send something to the chatting room. If the professor has not responded, even though that you might not hear anything, then if that's the case, that no response from the chatting room, then please send an email immediately to my email account. Right, so I'll monitor if I find something goes not as expected from my side, and I'll switch to the email to check. It usually works very well because I have been using this computer for 2 years during the pandemic, delivering classes. But you never know. Things just happen. Just like the COVID I've been getting. It's kind of don't know what happened. It just happened. Right? So last Tuesday I was not really coughing, but on Wednesday I started coughing, and I did not pay attention to it because I usually cough after the first week of class because I haven't been talking for very long. So I thought that was just itching in my throat, and the coughing continued until like Saturday, and it was not bad, but I feel like, well, maybe that's COVID. So I tested, and it showed positive. So in order to make sure that I don't give the virus to you, let's do the class here today. All right, so yeah, I'm coughing. I didn't mute my microphone, sorry. I'll share my computer screen so you can see my computer screen now. And what I would do today is to tell you where we are, what we are doing, and of course, help you a little bit about your assignment. So before I do that, let me go into some administration issue that we need to handle first. So right before the class starts, that I post an announcement on the Canvas system. So let me try to find the right section. Here we are. So MIS542, and the announcement is about assignment number 3, because this is the main. Well, it should be the main topic, or it should be the main exercise we are doing today. But unfortunately, we cannot do it today. And the reason being that this particular assignment or tutorial, we need to rely on a external service. And this is a virtual desktop, just like our Citrix virtual machine that the University of Arkansas, I think they use a VMware system and try to serve the general, actually not general, the higher education environment by providing a data analytic and data mining type of environment, enterprise system environment for us to use. And U of I Springfield is part of a SAP University Alliance, and so that is why we have access to their service. And the main reason that the design of this particular tutorial, or why bother using external service when we cannot control that by ourselves? The reason being that this is there are several reasons. One is that using multiple systems, open or or closed system, has become a norm in today's computing environment. So in the future, regardless of what organization environment you are in, you'll be exposed to both internal organization controlled enterprise system that is supposedly more reliable, or you have to rely on a external system such as Google service, Amazon cloud, Microsoft cloud, and in this case, we're using a virtual desktop from University of Arkansas. And that can be unreliable, and somehow this will become an experience. So that is reason number one. Reason number two is in on this particular platform, we are mainly experiencing a process of so-called cross-platform operation. So the main idea of tutorial 1C, which is in your module 1, is to give you a general process of what you might be encounter in the real world, going through something what we call the ETL process, right? In chapter, I believe chapter 11 or chapter 12, or even chapter 1, actually, they talk about ETL. And this is one step in the business intelligence or data analytic process. So when you are engaging in data project, data analytic project, reporting project, or even sometimes AI project, and the typical process is pretty much the same. You will start with the data source. So you have identified one or more data source, and these data source may be compatible, maybe well designed, maybe not, right? So sometimes it's just a bunch of spreadsheet. Sometimes it will be like a structured database, which is what we encounter. Sometimes that will be a unorganized web document or some sort of a spreadsheet document. Most likely in our business environment, you will encounter spreadsheet a lot. A lot of data in our business environment are saved in spreadsheet, Google Sheets, Microsoft Excel, or similar environment. But those data are kind of sitting around in different places, and they a lot of them it was designed for some purposes. Say, for example, handling transaction. So you go to Walmart, you buy some stuff, they collect your credit card, and you have that data. But when you are going to be using that for other purpose, such as analyzing the market, the consumer market, using your sales data, and those data are not directly suitable for you to use. So somehow you have to prepare the data, massage the data, or reorganize the data in a way that it's accessible or suitable for analytic or reporting purpose, right? So that is what module 1C is all about. Give you this simple process, give you a bunch of, I think in that particular assignment, I give you the Oracle data set, which is the one that we are using in our assignment 2, actually. So you use the textbook data set, and well, maybe not, actually. You know what? I did use a different data set, sorry. Not Oracle data set. So in this assignment, and we will probably do this again when we are, when it is possible for us to go through the tutorial. And we are going to be using the data set or database in managed by Microsoft SQL Server on the University of Arkansas environment. Right? So data is on the cloud in their virtual desktop. So we're going to be using that virtual desktop to grab the data, right? And of course, within that environment, you can query, you can study, you can analyze the data using Microsoft SQL Server in their environment. That's also another purpose for this assignment. Give you some exposure of what Microsoft Server look like, right? But because we're using Oracle. And so once you have access to that data set, now you have to find a way to take that data set and put in our Oracle environment. And the tutorial, I think, goes through 2 different environments. It gives you the idea of how to get the data set, save the data set in something what we call the plain text format or delineate text format. And the text file or RTF file will be downloaded or moved to your Oracle environment, and your Oracle system will import the data. And during the process of exporting data from Microsoft SQL Server to move the data through email or file transfer or to whatever method you move the data from one place to another, and then you read into the Oracle system. Ideally, you should have no data loss. That makes sense, right? So the ideal situation is you move the data, the original data will move totally from SQL Server Microsoft system to the Oracle environment, ideally. But unfortunately, the reality is, even though that we have in week number 1, we learned that in our database environment, the commonality for all the database management system is the SQL language, SQL, SQL language. And so using the same SQL language, you should get the same data input and output without any problem. But unfortunately, each vendor has their own slight variation or modification on the SQL language. So the result is that when you try to move data from one system to another system, even both of them are called structured relational database management system, you will show in experience inconsistency, data loss, or incorrect data that be moved from one place to another. The result is coming from the difference between two different systems. So tutorial 1, even though when you are doing that assignment, and just like our assignment number 1 and number 2, it seems like you're blindly following the tutorial, but it is my job to tell you actually there are a lot of this not secret, but some of the knowledge behind it you need to understand in order to really learn the essence of the tutorial that I designed for you, right? So enough saying about assignment 3. When we get there, and we will come back and discuss that a little bit more. So what I intend to do today is because I let you work on your assignment 2 without the direct help from me. So and so the design is that you submit your assignment 2, has submitted or not. I really just try to give you some pressure to force you to do something on your own side. And then coming to today's or this week's class, we review that particular process. And let me try to explain to you some of the idea or the important know-how that go into that particular assignment. Right. So what I would do is, fortunately, I have 2 computer screens here, and I will open up the let's see. Let me change my Zoom view so that I can see my computer screen better, right? So what I will do is I'll go into tutorial 1A and possibly tutorial 2A, 1B, sorry, 1A and 1B, and go through the process and explain some of the insight for you. And I'll do this step by step. So just bear with me, and I hope you also stay in a comfortable environment. So during the process, I hope that you can stay with attention, but you know that you can always go to bathroom or try to do some of the things. Just don't forget that once you finish up your own thing, coming back to look at this thing, so you won't ask silly questions. The so-called silly question is something I just explained right away, and you ask right away. that's called silly question, right? So let's get started, and I'll pull my 1A tutorial 1A slide from my other computer screen to really look into the tutorial. You give me a minute. 1, and that will be. All right, so that's tutorial module 1A tutorial. All right, so module 1A tutorial, and what you're seeing here on my computer screen is actually the virtual desktop already that we have used already in week number 1. Right, so this is virtual desktop. Basically, there are a couple of questions coming from the online student, especially last week when they are working on their assignment. One of the important questions is, Professor, I'm using Macintosh computer or even some version of the Windows system, And when you get going to this particular virtual desktop, the system asks you to download the Citrix plugin so you can install on your browser. So the browser, well, actually, it's not a browser. It's actually the native Citrix application can run after you sign in. And the Mac users sometimes feel like confused. How do I do that? Because some of the older system, older Mac or Windows 10 earlier edition, if you do not update your system, does not allow you to install that plugin. So if that is the case, or another situation will be the resource on your computer is not good enough to run the plugin, CPU or memory is not enough, then you cannot use the plugin. But the alternative is that as long as you have the newest edition or newest version, compatible version of the browser, this can run within the browser. So you have to use the light version, right? So the light version will run within the browser. But I'm using the plugin. And the first thing we do is that you want to make sure, again, where you are. I'm using the virtual desktop. And it is actually recommended to use virtual desktop. It will be easier for me to help you debugging your system, because if you're using your personal computer, everybody has their own security firewall setup, and software installation is different. It will be very difficult to service all of you without physically be with you, or with a lot of time that I can help you remotely. Right? We are a public university, not that rich to provide individual computer service for you. Right, so that is one. So what we're going to be doing now is to go to this website. I think that is what the okay. So this is uisacad.us.edu website, right? Well, actually not the website. And the from the tutorial number 1A, you will be directed to a website with Oracle behind it. So this is the web page that our web service written for managing the Oracle server on the system. Right, so this is the Oracle server, that application, so-called account application page. And the account application page, compared to the page I have next, is called a reset page. It's very similar, but basically what you need to do is provide your UIS identity and your UIS password. And this is a web application, verify your student status from the UIS system. So once you have done that, you put in your name and password and so on and so forth. And because I've done that already, if I do this again, and you will see that you will see that it says login successful account already exists, right? So which is no problem so far. And as I mentioned in week number 1, and one of the complexity I built into this particular course is during the process of our assignment, especially the first 5 assignments, you'll be exposed to all kinds of systems. And all these kind of systems, they all look very similar, but they are different. Right? For example, last week we have used 2 Oracle systems. One is Oracle 18 system under the server connection, or actually called a server on the local desktop. The other one is the APAC application that we use on the Oracle apex.oracle.com website. Right, so those are the 2 systems you have been exposed to. Believe it or not, behind the scene, the back engine, the database engine for these 2 systems are so similar. They are all Oracle products, and Apex is a newer edition. They're actually using the Oracle Database Express Edition 21. Right, so that is the edition number for apex.oracle.com. And the one you use, say for example, if you remember your assignment 1, we log in using an account called system account. That system account is actually using the Oracle 18C Enterprise Edition that is installed on your virtual desktop, right? So that is one, and the one you are seeing on the computer screen doesn't look like much, but this is a third Oracle system we are using. And I believe it's also 18C, right? Because that is a very stable release of Oracle database system that we use for teaching database in the last about 5 years. And the other web page is also on your module 1 already. It's called a reset page. And this particular step is recommend you, to do for sure. Right? So you have to do this to reset the page. And once you go into the reset page, you pretty much do the same thing. You now perform the operation once as well. The password here, right? Again, use your most focused attention in the first like 20 minutes of our class. Right? You still have the attention in our class to remember this. This password is your UIS password, and it is not the password we're going to be using later, right? So I use my password here. Okay, so and it says account reset successful. Right? Don't move out of this page right away. You can do this reset as many times as you like. When you encounter the situation, your account is on lock or is locked or something, you can always go to this system to reset. And after you reset, read a little bit about the feedback message. I should recommend them to enlarge the font size for the feedback message because it is important. Once you have reset your account, your Oracle user on the Oracle system installed on this particular server. This server is called UISACAD server. And this particular server, your account user password will be reset to lowercase Oracle. So that will be the password that we're going to be using. Right? So after I've done that, I'm going to do a couple of things that is not introduced in the tutorial. First of all, I will start the SQL developer. So SQL developer, let's give you a few minutes, maybe 30 seconds to 1 minute to allow the system to start. Right? During the time, I will read my own tutorial to make sure I don't miss anything. And so it is waiting and okay, yeah. So repeating, I'm going to be repeating after I start Oracle SQL developer, repeating the process we did in week number 1, just to reiterate the idea of different server, and we'll try to connect into the different type of environment. Right? Let me check a little bit on the Zoom to see any questions or comments showing up. Not yet. So very good. So assuming everybody is following very well. There are a couple of comments here. Let me check. Okay, let's see. Okay. What about now? Is the voice stable now? So they say the voice is not very stable. Can somebody respond to me to see if you can hear me more clearly? Okay, so let me try to put my mouse right above my microphone because that's it's a pretty high quality microphone. So I probably have a different setting. So do put in a message in the chatting room again if my voice fluctuate in and fade in and out. Right? That's probably because when I move away from the microphone, and it's okay. So so now we have this system set up here. And last week, believe it or not, before we do anything else, I will try to start the process we did last week. that is to start the Oracle 18C server on our virtual environment. Okay, and the other thing is that I need to move my Zoom control environment to another computer screen so I can see you better. Okay. So once we see the service showing up, we can now start the Oracle service by looking for Oracle service or ORCL, start the service. Okay, during the time to wait for the system to start, I also have some comments to talk about. Each one of this environment I selected for you to be exposed to or to confuse you, let's put it that way, has its purpose. And this server on the virtual desktop is the one I intentionally use so that you can be exposed to the real job of a DBA. So the DBA will have a control of the system account, and you can do a lot of fine tuning to the system, and that is the experience on the DBA administrative side. The account you just have applied on the UISACAD server, that one is for the true data analytic or learning purpose. And the other one that we use on apex.oracle.com is also serve the same purpose. So we have, but in addition to learn the data management from the Apex, we also learn a little bit reporting and application building on that environment. So the Apex has application building feature. The Oracle 18C on UIS ACAD is serve as the main learning platform, especially for assignment number 3 and 4. Right. And the other platform, which is the one we are using on the virtual desktop, is mainly for user management and fine tuning. So for last week, we have a little bit trouble creating the user on my Wednesday class. So the recording encountered some glitch. And that is because I'm not usually using the user in the virtual desktop to perform any job. And the second service that need to be started is for the listener service. Okay. So now the system is already starting and we can make a connection. So this is repeating what we done last week. So click on this plus sign with a green button here. Let's say read and write access, right? So this is the message you just saw is actually the virtual desktop asked me to see if I need to communicate to my local computer. That is the question there. So let's say system on local Oracle. Right? So I intentionally put the local there so you can see that the host name here is localhost. So I'm accessing the server on that particular desktop. And if you remember, we need to change that SID to ORCL. And username is system. And the password is password. Right? And then we can test and it should be running smoothly. Not always. Even I've been teaching this forever. Well, see, there's some problem with the connection. Yeah, the spelling is wrong. ORCL, not ORCC. That's kind of typing too quickly, right? So that's connect. So this is your Oracle account on the local system. This is something about the password expiry. Let's ignore that for now. And I'll come back and show you how to fix that problem. You will encounter the same problem by you. So you have one connection here. For assignment number 2, the main connection you are going to be make is also using the same system. This is where I said last week that the SQL developer is a management application. So it is just a user interface for you to manage the database server. From this particular user interface, you can actually connect into multiple database server. Right? So we are connecting to one right now. So what I'm going to be doing is connecting to the account that we just applied it here from the UIS website, UIS ACAD website. Again, look at the URL, uisacad.uis.edu. That is our sandbox server. It's actually a Red Hat Linux server. So let me call this UIS UISACAD. Your tutorial may use a different name. I'm just use whatever name I feel like comfortable here. It really doesn't matter. It's just the name here recognize the connection that I'm trying to make. And as a administrator, you have to somehow mentally know which connection is what, right? So again, I'm going to be reiterate this concept whenever we try to, and this is a part of the debugging process, problem solving process you will have in your job in the future when you are facing complicated or complex information system, right? There's a comment here says something here. Sir, checking connect, I'm getting failure message. So somebody has a failure message. Yeah. Since we're doing remotely, why don't we do this? If you can stay or keep trying and wait until end of our class, and I will allow you to share your computer screen. That way I can solve your problem more closely. So let me go through the process one more timing, one time completely, and explain the whole process. All right. Thank you for the comments. Right. So this one, what we're going to be doing is connecting to the Oracle server on UISACAD website, or not website, server. So that's a UISACAD Oracle server. Right? And the connection name is actually, so I'm using my account, TWANG22. And the server uisacad.us.edu server to connect to access this account. The password here is Oracle. Right? So this is the result of account reset. Once you have reset the account, then the password will be set to Oracle. Right? The what was the original account before you reset? The original account is the same. I mean, not the account. The original password is the same password as your UIS email or UIS net ID password, and that is managed by the enterprise server. And so basically, what the process is that when you go to that website, apply for an account, the server script, the web script, will take your account and create a username and password. Use your account in our Oracle server. Right? So the password will be passed on to the Oracle server. But once the password is passed on to the Oracle server, our university enterprise server lose control of this Oracle account, and the account is independent. Right? And your password, original password, UIS password, may or may not work on the new, well, not new, but on the UISACAD Oracle.uis.edu server. Now, the reason is because Oracle system has a different set of username and password rules, default username and password rule. Yeah, so this is basically some of the important topic to be discussed in our security environment today, because we recommend, or everybody's recommending, that you have to use this complex password. Even the username they recommend, it's probably not using an easy username. But anyway, the complex password to protect your identity. And usually your complex password will involve with lowercase and uppercase letters, numbers, and special symbols or notation, right? But unfortunately, I mean, Oracle has the same rule as well. But unfortunately, if you have taken any programming language, you know that every programming language has something called a reserved word or reserved character. Say, for example, in most of the programming language, slash is a reserved character. You cannot use a slash to generate a new name or new stuff. You cannot use slash in your password in general. Right? So that is the limitation of any environment. You have some reserved word you cannot touch that you cannot use as your, in this case, password. Oracle has its own reserved character that you cannot use. And I believe the reserved character include not only slash, forward slash, backward slash, as well as pound sign or so-called hashtag. And I think hashtag and underscore maybe, but there are some reserved character in default Oracle password rule. So if your own password involve one of those special character and be moved into Oracle, and those character will be missing. So it really doesn't matter what kind of how many times you type in your password, you will not go through the authentication process, right? So that is the problem with the default password. Can you change the password rule in Oracle in order to be consistent with Microsoft or some other enterprise system? The answer is yes, but our server has not done that. So it followed the Oracle convention, right? So that is one kind of a nuance or some of the little secret. And actually, believe it or not, the 3 minutes explanation I gave it to you, it took me probably 3 days or 3 weeks when I first developing this course to figure it out what happened exactly. So, but anyway, so that is a password limitation. So this is the reason that it will be a good practice in our class to reset your account. So anytime you have a trouble logging into this UISA CAD system, you reset your account. Then coming back to try it again, you will probably have a better result. So the password here is Oracle, and it's also helping me in a way that if everybody said Oracle, believe it or not, I can access your account because I know your password already. I know your username, so I can actually access your account from my side. So it's much easier for me to resolve problem in your system as well. So keep that default password. And the host name here now is no longer localhost. It's Oracle UIS.edu. Right? It is not the usacad.us.edu. It's just a URL that we assign to that particular server, but physically it's actually installed on the UISA-CAD server. And and SID is not ORCL, it's Oracle. Right? So let me see if I can make the connection. So theoretically, that should be yeah. Let me turn off my phone. So not turning off my phone, just silent the phone. It's coming from my pharmacy. Probably try to give me some medicine. So test. So success. Excuse me. I didn't mute my microphone. It's too late for me to mute it. So make connection. Now on the left-hand side of my computer screen, you see two connections. Right? So most of your problem will be resulting from the connection problem. Right? So if you can connect successfully, most likely you can follow the tutorial and be able to finish up your assignment. Right? But again, if you pay attention to the tutorial, you understand a lot more about the system and why we set this up. just as a trivia thing, that if you look on the connection panel in the SQL developer, you also see something called the Oracle NoSQL, NoSQL. In module 1, and if you take the quiz already, chapter 1 quiz, and you will be exposed to that particular terminology already. So basically, NoSQL is a term coined in 2012, just about 10 years ago, to describe the environment we are in today. And NoSQL stands for not only SQL. So we go beyond the SQL language and try to provide a more flexible and a modern cloud environment in the database environment. And you can also have a schema service connection that look like a cloud, isn't it? It's actually designed to connect into cloud database, including Oracle, Microsoft, Amazon, and other cloud database. Right? So that's a nuance. And you can connect as many account as possible. You can even create multiple connections on the same account that will create. And each account represent in a network environment called one session. So every time you have a connection, it's called a session. So say, for example, now we're using Zoom. This is a Zoom session. And if you're making a phone call, every successful connection or phone call is a session. So some sessions are synchronous session. Some sessions are asynchronous session. So the session we have here is a synchronous session. And the session in database communication is also a synchronous communication. The session on web page sometimes are asynchronous. It's waiting for one user to request and the server to respond. They become input and output. They are not happening at the same time, right? Some analogy, and this is knowledge not for the database, but again, database and network knowledge are related. So let me just try to give you a little bit about network knowledge if you have never learned network communication before. So it's kind of like usually when two party, could be two machine or two person or one machine, one person, doesn't matter. When two parties communicate with each other, right? Like in this case, we're communicating through the application Zoom, and we need to have some sort of agreement. Right? How do we communicate? Right? Say, for example, in old time, when people are using a ham radio, the radio is one way out, one way in. They cannot hear each other simultaneously. So usually they will establish some sort of protocol says every time you start to say something, you will say, bravo, bravo. This is say Taewei Wen, over. Right? So this bravo, bravo, calling your own nose name. And the end keywords over is actually the protocol you establish between people. Says, okay, because the radio can can only go one way. You somebody have to talk first, and you cannot interrupt. So this is the way that people know that you are talking. I'm not going to be interrupting. When you say over, it's become other party's turn to take over, and the other party will call their own node name to initiate the conversation. So that is an example of the protocol. And different system will have different protocol and to talk to each other. And in here that we have our protocol as well. And this protocol, every time you establish the connection, that is called a session. And the session can be multiple session or single session. And it become a management job. So from the management perspective, if you are a database system administrator, you can say, okay, every account I created, say for example, TWNG22, I only allow this particular user to make one connection, one session, and that will further increase the security of your system, right? So you cannot use the same account log in multiple places, right? So this is like something management problem, like if you are using share username and password in Netflix. So, so if you're watching Netflix and you subscribe to Netflix and you share your username password with your friend, right? So if Netflix allow multiple session, multiple connection, then uh, a lot of people can log on to Netflix. I believe that Netflix currently allow probably 3, 4 simultaneously running session. Once you see that number, they will block you, telling you, oh, you are running in another device. And so that number of connection can be made is called the number of section. That connection, how many time you can log into Netflix simultaneously is the connection we're talking about here. Right? So that is the connection concept in this network environment. So now we have that environment, and we are accessing or create that connection from within the SQL developer. One further question about this SQL developer is that some of you go to the tutorial, because in certain part of the tutorial tell you that you can actually install the SQL developer on your personal computer. So the question is, can you use your personal computer to access these systems? The answer is yes and no. Typically, you will encounter error because our university server is protected by a university campus firewall. And usually the server only recognize the IP address, initiate the session call from within the campus network. If you are using the Citrix virtual environment, you are logically inside the campus network. So even though that you feel like you're accessing that outside the network, but this is a VPN connection to the Citrix virtual desktop. So your IP address is actually recognized as inside the network. If you configure your VPN connection from your local desktop correctly to the UIS campus network, our university used to use a Cisco client, Cisco VPN client for that particular purpose. But over time, they have changed the gate name, some of the number that used to configure the VPN. So it doesn't work that well. We may be able to find out a way to access through VPN, but it will be complicated. I need to probably do a little investigation, work with multiple party to make it work. So I'll try as much as you can using the virtual environment. The same thing applied to the next thing we're going to be doing is accessing the server through the most native, most classic way of server management. That is using the terminal software or terminal device to access the server. The so-called terminal, sometimes called the dump terminal, right? You probably read about this particular term in other introduction to MIS or computer classes. The dump terminal is the term used to describe some of the older mainframe type of environment when personal computer was not around. And so if you want to access the mainframe, you have to have a terminal doing nothing but just taking the input and output. Back in the old time, the terminal is not a graphical user interface terminal. It can also display text, interact with text. So those text-based terminal will be called a dump terminal. But when we move into the graphical user interface, especially after Windows 3.1 in 1989, then everything moved to the thing we see today, user-friendly environment. So, but once in a while, some of the technology, especially some of the very fundamental infrastructure level management issue, when you cannot access the graphical user interface, a lot of administrators still like to use the text-oriented interface. And so that dump terminal becomes useful. And so in each one of this operation system we use today has a utility program that can run as a last resort. So when everything fails, when your window fails, when your Macintosh fails, as long as you can access that terminal software that you can connect it to internet and interact with other server and do all these type of things. This is what you usually see a hacker is doing. They will just look at one screen with all this command line that you have to typing in now and reading very quickly, and nobody know what they are talking about. Those are the typical example of terminal, right? So in Macintosh computer, if the Macintosh is running, you can use a software called terminal to simulate this kind of dumb terminal. And in the Windows environment, we have a utility called CMD. If you type CMD, that terminal will show up. And you can use some of the old protocols such as FTP or FTP, PIN or network or something like some email protocol working here as well. Then you can use this to connect to other systems. So this is a default window dumb terminal environment, command line environment that you can use. And the one we are using in this class is the one that I use when I'm more like a computer science student, because I was a minor in computer science when I was doing my master. And this is called a PuTTY. This has been around for a long time. If we have installed PuTTY on the virtual desktop, you can also install PuTTY on your personal computer to play with it if your first computer doesn't mind install another software. But I'll recommend using virtual desktop. And so this is a more advanced dumb terminal environment or dumb, so a command line environment, and which allow you to connect or simulate the connection using different type of protocol. So just looking at the PuTTY interface, you will see that there's something, of course, has a host name type, right? The host name, and you have something called a connection type. These connection type, raw, telnet, rlogging, SSH stands for secure shell and serial communication. So these are the allowable protocol that you can use a text-based command line environment to communicate or doing network communication. So those are protocol. Remember what I said about protocol? It's just an agreement, communication agreement, which agreement you want to use. Each one of them has their benefit and disadvantage. Some of them allow you to download files. Some of them allow only ASCII text transfer over internet and so on and so forth. And the one secure shell is actually the one using a different port and different encryption mechanism to it more secure than the other three, actually other four that you see on the secure type. So that is what I'm going to be using, and that is one we allowed it from our server. So if you use other, I think Telnet will work as well, but Telnet has a lot of limitation on what you can do. So we're using secure share. The server name now is not again always try to identify what system you are dealing with. We are dealing with uisacad.uis.edu. This is the server, the URL for that particular server. And we are going to be using secure share connection. There are some other things you can do. Say, for example, I can actually enlarge the font size and make it more readable. But every time I have to waste time try to figure out how to do that, so I decide to stay with a small print, hurting your eye, but make sure the thing will work. So click yes for now. That's a security warning here. And one of the warning, if you still encounter problem, or that have not submitted your assignment 2 yet, And this is somewhere you have to pay special attention. The command line environment we are seeing here does not work very well with backspace. So you can move your cursor back here. Well, theoretically you can, but it's not visible. So when you move back your cursor, you don't know what you are dealing with. How far. So basically you're just dealing that with a blind eye. So whenever you type in here, if you type something incorrectly, username or password, restart the whole session and do it again. Right? So there are several username and password that we have to go through to get it done, right? And again, the reason is because you don't see the backspace. You cannot correct your typing error by going back and change that that one character you mistype, right? And I'm going to be logging to TWNG22. So far, you can see the name. But when you type in the password, you don't see anything. So make sure you type your password. There's no feedback, no response that you will see when you type anything. So make sure that you type in correctly. Right. So if you type in that correctly, hopefully you log into the UIS ACAD server. It's it's a good time to look at the feedback message. One, this is telling you what kind of server you are dealing with. You are dealing with a Red Hat Enterprise Linux server, number 6. Right? So if you know anything about Unix or Linux, you know that if you create a Excel or some other XDE or some other type of graphical user interface, you can use that shell to make this more useful. So a lot of environment, including Chromebook, including some of the Linux based. I have a lot of Linux machine used for testing purpose. Some of my older computer, I basically install a Linux because it's more efficient operation system actually can run an older version of a computer without too much trouble. So the password here for the first login is not Oracle. It is your UIS email account. And because what we are doing is we are using our UIS identity to log into the UIS ACAD server. Right? UIS ACAD server only recognize the UIS credential. But the next step that we're going to be doing will be using the Oracle password. And that is that when we enter the following statement. And another interesting thing to look at here is that if you look at the prompt, right, and you have that experience already since most of you have worked on the assignment, finish up the assignment. The prompt does not look like a window prompt. Let me compare the window prompt with you. Right. So if you look at the window prompt, I kind of open up 2 command line environment. The one on the right-hand side lower part is the window. So you see the prompt is a greater sign at the end, and you have the path of your computer at the in the front and your hard drive, C drive over there, right? And but on the UISACAD server, actually, interesting thing enough is that if you look at the top of the window, right, if you can really see the small print, or try to see it, it actually says UI TWNG22 at UISACAD 5. And in the current semester, we are using UISACAD 5.uis.edu, this particular server. And over time, we have used 1, 3, 5, 7. Depends on we are upgrading the system or not, because and why UISACAD.uis.edu work? Because we have already created alias and connect all these accounts together. So when you type in UISACAD.uis.edu, that particular name will redirect you to the current version we are using. That's also another network management secret or confusion or know-how that used to confuse a lot of people, because sometimes you type USACD, in this case it becomes USACD5. Which one is which? The answer in here is both, right? But if I remove that alias or remove that connection between the two names, then this doesn't work. Right? And the other thing is that earlier I mentioned about the cursor. Look at the cursor; it's different from the window cursor. By the end of the cursor, it's a $sign instead of it can be anything, right? It depends on how you set up the system. It can be a $sign, it can be an %, it can be a long list of words, it can be 5 exclamation point. So it depends on who is the system administrator, how to set it up. And this is the default setting. So Linux Red Hat system use a $sign and with a bracket, square bracket in front of you to represent who is the user and what kind of a shell or command system you're trying to talk to. So we are using the Linux command line shell to talk to the system, and the user that log into Linux is CWRNG22 at USACD5 user. Right. So in here, we're going to be typing, according to the tutorial, is SQL plus. Right. So let me move my cursor here. SQL plus. Now, this SQL plus is actually a application program, just like your SQL developer in the Windows environment or your Microsoft SQL Management Studio in the Microsoft environment. SQL Plus is a program that serves as an interface. So the role of SQL Plus is equivalent to the role of SQL developer. They all do the same thing, talking to a server. The difference is SQL developer is a graphical application. You can move your mouse, but SQL Plus is a command line. You can only enter command to access that server. Right. So when you type SQL Plus and type in your username, in this case, my username is CWNG22. You have to put your own username, not my name, right? If you put my name, well, actually, it might work because you have my password. My password here is Oracle. So if your name doesn't work, you might just try my account. I open this account for you to try to troubleshoot. If my account works, then it works. And must be something wrong with setting your account. Typically, that's what we can do. Again, the secret, and I like to emphasize this, learning MIS student, you'll be involved in both management as well as technical problem solving. Problem solving is a process to identify possibility, eliminate possible, and finally you will identify with problem that need to be solved. Right? So that, but how do you come up with an alternative? That you got to be knowledgeable enough to see what are the potential thing that might be going into the whole problem. So yeah, Bridget, you have any question you want to ask? Go ahead. Do I lose my voice again? Hello? I see a question coming from Bridget, and not sure what she would like to ask, but I'll continue. Right. But again, if you feel like I'm lost, do let me know. Okay. Maybe I would close my window because it's a little bit noisy outside. Okay. So probably block out the external voices or noise. Enhance the microphone a little bit more. Okay, good. So that will be, so the whole command line here, SQL plus space, DWNG at oracle.us.edu. It's saying I'm going to be starting the application called SQL Plus inside the Linux server, and I'm going to be logging to SQL I mean, not login. I'm going to be using SQL Plus login to a server for oracle.us.edu with the account called TWNG22. So that entire line means that. Right? And usually every little character in a command line program has a meaning attached to it. So once you have done that, you should be able to be prompt with the password. The password, the second password we are entering here is called Oracle. You don't see the password, you only see the star. Okay, so that will be the final prompt for your tutorial. Okay, allow me to cough a little bit. And one last note about the tutorial up to this particular point. If you see the prompt now changed from the $sign to what? SQL greater sign. So now you know you are not dealing with Linux server anymore, right? So you're not talking to Linux anymore. You're talking to SQL Plus, and the SQL Plus is talking to oracle.us.edu, and you're actually talking to oracle.us.edu. So the language we're using here is now SQL language. Right? So that is the first part of your assignment number 2. So the tutorial go on to the process of you can install the SQL Plus SQL Developer on your own machine and that sort of thing. You don't need to worry about that, and you can go back to your SQL Developer. Now you can connect to your SQL Developer, and SQL Developer again. Pay attention to which connection you are using always. Right on the left hand side, you have we have two connections. On the right hand side, you see that 2 tab. Yeah, 2 tab. I'm moving back and forth. The change is very small, but there are 2 tab. One says system on local Oracle. The other says UISACAD Oracle Server TWNG22. Right. So this one is that our university UISACAD server. And the exercise is we type into the same SQL and the response will be and run this particular command. The response should be your own username. Right? So the feedback, the response is your own username. That is. So there are 2 purposes, of course, that we want to verify you made the right connection. Second, we want to make sure that you are doing the exercise, not your friend. Yeah. Well, unless your friend use your own account, you want to share your password with them to do all the assignment. Right. So that is one. If you issue the same statement, I'm copying the statement to the system account. This is what we do in assignment number 1. And run the script. You see the response should be system. And so you know what is the purpose of this particular query is all about. Identify who am I in the system, what connection I'm using in the system. Okay, makes sense? So that's the thing. So because of that, and the reason I'm doing that is because I want to show you that you can actually do that in the text-oriented environment. This is not in your tutorial, but you can actually go into our PuTTY environment where we have already SQL Plus connection. Typing select, right? Select space user name from user underscore user, right? And semicolon. And you see the result is also my username. Right? So that is the thing. So basically what we are seeing here is once you know this language, well enough, you don't really need this to do your job. You can do everything by just typing and remembering what you do. But of course, if you need a little bit help, because in here there are some help that, say for example, keywords are highlighted with blue color, and when you type in some important table or object, the system will give you actually recommendation and follow up with some of the, not in here. Yeah, there we go. See, when I type, the system will give you some important help to identify objects in correct way. So we are looking at public.user.user. Let's see if that works. There are two of them. Each one of them serve different purpose. So this one gives you the system back, respond back again. Right? So that's correct. And let me see. The next exercise is the well, let me stop here for a while to see if any quick question we can resolve other than looking your desktop and then coming back. I'll pause myself a little bit and cough a little bit in between. Okay, if not, I'm continuing because we're recording the on Zoom, so I will try to continue my talk as much as I can. So the next thing we're going to be doing is go to our Apex. I'm still within the virtual desktop, right? Again, this will be a good idea. And one of the learning objectives that I want to achieve, it's not written on your syllabus, but it is in my mind when I was creating this exercise, is that in the future, virtualization is important, right? Yeah, this including the use of the use of cloud environment and say systems such as Google Drive or the Box or Dropbox. And of course, Box and Dropbox are only for the storage. And in the future, a lot of things will be moving to the cloud, including Microsoft Office. So you're using Office 365. You have OneDrive, your file is saved on the service. And if you are the video editors or YouTuber, you might want to use this called Adobe Creative Cloud. And that is a software that you have access to through the university. And all of them are extremely nice cloud-based software, but somehow you have to learn or actually become virtual user to get used to the future environment, because everything what you do is on the cloud. Yeah, so the good news is in the future, you don't really need to buy very expensive computer to do all the job, because the heavy duty computing stuff is on the other side of your computing environment. You only need to buy a computer that allow you to play your game. But of course, a lot of games require a lot of resources, or just watch movie. That's good enough, right? But I kind of deviate from my original goal already. So the goal is to virtualize yourself and be able to work everywhere. And this is actually my goal. It took me about 4 or 5 years to move from my specific personal computer now to today. If I go into a classroom without my computer, I can pick up any computer and start teaching as long as I have a good internet connection. So that is the behavior I force myself to change, just to share with you why I'm using the environment. So we're going to be using apex.oracle.com, but I'm accessing this through virtual desktop. Right, you can do this whenever, wherever, on your computer or on here. Doesn't matter. So I'm logging in with the account that I created last week. Right, last week. So last week I have UIS. And remember that I mentioned that you have to remember and keep the email that you apply the account some per se, because you need to remember the workspace. Workspace is the specific additional information required in Apex in order to log in. I'm using the UIS email to apply for this account, and I think I use, and I sometimes look like okay. I have to check my. Hold on a second. I have to check my 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 application to make sure I got this correctly. Okay, I have the UIS MIS542A. Okay, now I'm in. I use lowercase instead of uppercase, so that's my little glitch I had. So this will be the cloud environment, and last week I don't know if I compared this environment with the SQL developer environment already. If with I did or not, regardless of what I did or not, let me repeat this again. Right? And there are many features in the apex.org.edu.com environment. And SQL Workshop, just like the name suggested, is very similar to SQL Developer. So only this part, if you select this one, you have already this environment. And I did the recreation already. And what I would do is do the process one more time and show you potential error you might encounter in the process. So I'm doing the wrong way, right? Yeah. Okay. Bridget says that you still have that problem. Yeah, that we're going to be resolving that. Try to do that afterward. After we complete this thing. So until I finish up, I want to finish out the whole thing. So this environment, one of the things I want to compare again, this is repeating information, is that if you go into object browser, right, and you see that this is object browser. If you click on this tab on the left-hand side, you see table, view, index, sequence, type, package, procedure, function, trigger. All these potential database objects are in there. If you go to SQL developer, this is SQL developer, and regardless of which connection you're using, let's open that one. If you look at the list, table, view, index, package, procedure, functions, operator, queue, and so on and so forth. This one has more. So you know they are sort of related. As a matter of fact, they are doing more or less the same thing. The only difference is they are using a different user interface design. So the SQL developer allow you to manage multiple objects all at the same time, but the application express has a multiple layer. So to manage a different thing, you need to go different place to find. And the object browser only allow you to manage database object, not allowing you to manage user object or system object. So that's a difference, right? So the assignment asks you to recreate database in this environment, right? In this environment, as well as in the SQL developer, not SQL developer, it's actually on our UISA-CAD oracle.uis.edu server. Right? We are creating the account, creating the data in two places. So where can I see the the data you recreated? If you finish up correctly, in the SQL developer environment, you'll be able to see the table by opening up the table, see it here, right? See it here. And you should be able to see the inventory table. And in the inventory table, you click on data, you will be able to see the data right here. And that is the data we're going to be using in this class. And in the SQL Apex environment is the same. So when you work on the next assignment, which in this case will be assignment 4 instead of assignment 5, right? So we are going now moving slowly from end of assignment 2 to assignment 4. So in between, in the process, you have to upload your data, right? Or load your data that you use to do the query. And here in both of my environment, I already have the data. Say, for example, in my Apex environment, and this is I believe the last recording that I have from last week that I recreated data, and you can actually see the data. So if you go to inventory, click on the data tab, you see that the first data is 100, 200, 300. If you go to the SQL developer environment, you also see that 100, 200, 300, same. But the trick here, or a little thing that you need to pay attention to, is where do I get to see what, right? So there are multiple tabs on each one of this worksheet you can open and take a look at it. And I'm going to be opening up one interesting thing to tell you. And later we're going to be using this back and forth, well, just for you to learn sort of by try and error, and telling you that yes, of course, the modern environment is not as dumb as that you have to type in everything in SQL. Because SQL is not the 100% user friendly environment. So that you should be that knowing. So most of the engine we are using, including Apex, or when you write SQL query, there's always something that can assist you, some sort of smart query environment. This is also true for system that you might be using in the future, like Power BI or Tableau. And in Power BI and Tableau, you have to grab data. You have to issue query to grab data. And a lot of these environment has query engine. This query engine will give you a visual view of the table. You can select the column and drop and do all these kind of interactive thing. Same thing here in SQL Developer and Microsoft environment. At the end of the environment, there's something called a SQL. If you click on that SQL tab, it's actually telling you what SQL is required to generate, in this case, the table here. It's an automatic query generation machine. It does not look exactly like the SQL we're seeing here because it's automatic language, but it is the same language we're using to query manually by ourselves. Right. So does the Apex environment. Apex environment also have that function. You can see the SQL that used to generate that particular table. So this is the SQL. The SQL we are looking at here is create table SQL. And you have seen this when we start writing that script. And one potential error you might have here is that when you try to run the script more than once, that's why I think I will skip the process of running the script because it was already recorded and published from last week. And I think the very last segment of the recording in the last week. And if you try to run the script again, right? So in this case, we have two scripts. One is create, the other is insert. If you try to run the script one more time, or within here, try to run it one more time, you will get error message. The reason being that the table has been created already. So if you run it again, it will say table already exists. Let's try to see what the error message look like. You run this again, it will says, okay, say run script now. And it give you all kind of error. Error is what? Error, 5 error. The basic is saying that the table already exists, right? So, and well, even though it doesn't really say that, but it give you an error code. Say something about oh yeah, it's already said that name is already used by an existing object. So ORA dash 06512 is the error code. So encounter Oracle error message is always a good idea. Type in this error message, the number ORA something in Google to try to see if you can understand what they try to tell you the potential problem is coming from. Okay. All right. So that is, but we have the data in both environment. The thing we are going to be doing now is following chapter 2. So your learning objective is following chapter 2 and tutorial 2B. I think that will be the process we just went through was the end of the assignment number 2. So you should be able to get all the screenshot from there. And like I said, we will after 4 o'clock. I will stop the talking, stop the lecturing, and start by give you opportunity to share or troubleshooting your problem on your side. May not be resolving all, but we'll try because we're not in the classroom. Sometimes it's really tiring troubleshooting over the internet. So let's see where we are. Okay, so that's end of assignment number 2. Assignment number 4. Right. So if you finish up assignment number 3 and done with reading of chapter number 1, done with the quiz of number 1, done with the reading, done with the quiz. Now we are moving into number, what would you call this? Chapter 2. Chapter 2. And chapter 2 is directly related to your next assignment. Your next assignment is module number 2. I'm going to be opening up module number 2 right now. So this particular section has now can see module number 2. In module number 2, you have 2 more assignments. Right? One assignment is, well, actually assignment 4, actually 4, 5, and 6. Right? So this module will run until end of next week or probably a little bit more. And because I try to give you more practice on the SQL assignment, right? And what we're going to be doing next week is mainly lecture on chapter 3 and chapter 4 on the normalization. That part will be more or less in the category of conceptual exercise, not really a hands-on exercise. But anyway, so that's move on to assignment number 4. If you look at assignment number 4, you will see that assignment number 4, you will be working on SQL Select tutorial number 1 and capture the slide. This is a very simple assignment. You can do that, I believe, after we have done our exercise today. And to prepare you for doing that particular assignment, let's open chapter 2 lecture slide. Again, well, like many stuff in our class, we are a very short semester. You gotta squeeze a lot of things in your learning, unfortunately, right? So this is one of the things. And chapter 2 is a chapter teaching you how to use SQL select statement. Right? Again, select statement, I cannot emphasize more. It will be the foundation of any one of you want to get involved with anything like a data security or almost anything that touch with database that you need to know. Right. So if to learn the keywords, select from where, order by, in particularly group by statement. My emphasis Learning emphasis is group by. Why we need to emphasize on the group by statement. So basically, this is what happened when you try to write a report. Thinking about a typical situation, if you're running a store, any retail store, you conduct sales and you collect your customer and sales information, who at what time, what item or he or she buy, what gender he or she is, and phone number, address, all these all these called a regular attribute you try to describe a customer. And later on, you can use the time, location, then all these to figure out the behavior of the customer, right? So in order and usually what we do, how do we understand a bunch of sale? And say, for example, you probably say want to understand week by week. Week number one, what is the average sale? Week number two, average sale. So what you need to do, if you have, imagine you have an Excel spreadsheet, you have to somehow create a summary or the summation and average for every week. And that particular operation in using formula or using a pivot table in Excel is performed by this group by statement. And later when you go into the tutorial, select tutorial 1, 2, 3, you will learn a little bit more advanced pivoting or so-called summarizing, reporting, useful reporting query, including row out or row up and cube. So those are additional, more advanced way of grouping the statement. Right, so the group by is what I emphasize. So the way you read, right? If you have a textbook, that would be great. Read the textbook one page at a time, and type in a query into the environment, and you will learn more. If you do not have 24-hour access to the textbook, say share a textbook with your friend, you can use the slide. The two set of slides is one chapter slide into two. You know the slides are very comprehensive, right? So they actually go step by step, showing you how to learn the sequel. So let me show you what do I mean by that. So of course there are some explanation, try to understand what they're trying to tell you behind the thing. And they explain some of the basic concept as well. But when they reach the point showing you how to query the data, that is when we start introducing SQL language. And I'm not going to be lecturing. Again, please do read this. If you don't have the time to read the entire chapter on the book, do read the slide, right? So the slide and take the quiz. That will give you a foundation, better understanding of what exactly are you doing. So we are doing the select statement. So the select statement has the basic structures of capital letters are the keyword. Select something from something, where something. And this language structure in data analytics, we call them slice and dice. Select is slicing data or table vertically. So you're selecting how many columns in this table you want. Where statement is the dicing, how many rows you want to select. So the condition is where, and from is specify which table you're trying to grab data. So the basic structure is assuming data is organized in table, and now we can using this square, very organized, structured data to access data based on our logic statement. Right? So that's the basic thing. So now we can follow. Say for example, let's try this particular statement. And what it says is we are selecting SKU description, department, buyer from SKU data. So let's go back to our SQL environment, right? So that before we issue that particular statement, let's go to object browser. The object browser, select SKU data. The SKU data, the way we read object browser is when you click on an object, right? So select in this case table and select SKU data. And why we want to select SKU data because this is the one we are selecting from our, this particular slide number 28. We are issuing this particular statement. So we are selecting 4 columns from one table. So this is the 4 column we are looking at. And look at how many columns we have here in this particular table. And the first page you see when you select an object is called a table definition page. So this table definition telling you how many columns we have. Column number 1, SKU. Column number 2, SKU description. Column number 3, department. Column number 4, buyer. So if you click on the second tab, this table will show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 items or 8 rows. And we have 1 column SKU, 1 column SKU description, 1 column department, 1 column buyer. So this format, the way that we see real data, is kind of similar to what you will be seeing in spreadsheet environment. But most of the database engine, you can see data in this way. But of course, the reason that we are using database engine instead of spreadsheet is, that if the database become bigger and bigger and bigger, you don't want to see the data in this format because it will take a long time just load the data into the table and able to see it. And this involves some of the modern technology advancement, including the so-called, I forgot one of the terms here. Microsoft tried to allow your spreadsheet to load your SQL Server or database data. And that is dangerous, and that will impact your computer's performance immediately. But we have technology to be able to do that with reasonably okay performance. Right? So that's putting that way. So make sure we are doing the same thing, right thing. Then going back to SQL command. And SQL command is a place you're going to be doing your assignment and practice. So in this case, we're typing. Select, right? Select SKU, comma. I have to put this the SQL on the side so I can type in correctly. SKU, description, and we have a department, we have buyer, and from AU data. Right. So the way I'm typing it here is a convention that we usually type the SQL statement, and we return a line or use a new line for every keyword we are trying to issue here. So if select, that is one phrase, and from is another phrase, and where will be another phrase. So in this case, we have select 4 columns from the original table. The other thing you might want to look at is I have 1 space in here, but no space here. I believe they will work well, right? Or work equally. It really doesn't differentiate that space that much. Comma is the one eliminator the SQL language will recognize. And finally, semicolon is the one recognized by SQL language. So always end one sentence. This is one sentence or one statement from SQL language with a semicolon. And with this, you can run the script, or in this case, not a script, statement. Multiple script will be a statement. So the result will be showing up at the bottom. So this will be the result of your query. If this can be redirected into other application, it will show up on your web page or show up on some other user app or some other thing. But behind the thing, you are issuing this particular. If you say get rid of 1 column, I'm selecting only 3. See the result, we have 4 columns. If you run this again, you have 3 columns. So that's the result. That is where, that is how the SQL language is designed. So if we want to say limited how many row or something that you can show up or not. You can say using some sort of a keyword. Say if I want to limit it to camping department, look at department. There are two departments: water sports and camping. Let's just say where department equal to. I'm going to be using a single column, a single quote says camping. I only show camping, then the result will have only 4 rows being selected in this case. Let's see if that works. Two words. Why there are only 2? Maybe the camping spelling is incorrect in the original data set. This is one of the database problems. I thought I saw 4 camping. Let's see. If I get rid of this thing, what I can do is I can put double slash in there just to, this is called comment. And if you do that, no double slash in here. Sorry, it's only working SQL developer environment. Okay. Why there are only 2 camping while I see 4 camping here? Right? You might ask that question. This is a typical database problem, and because I teach this class for so many times, I know. In the original data set, 2 of the camping, I think, have a space behind the camping. So when you see this in printout, it shows the same thing, but one is with a space, the other is without space. So when you try to issue the one I have said where equal to camping, you only see 2. Right? So that is what happened here. But and this is where I think I will stop in terms of your learning process. So from the textbook, now you go slide by slide. So you see there how many slides there are? 94 slides. So once you go to this 94 slide, now 94 slide has a query, say, and you can just try to understand query, go one step at a time, understand, say in this case, they teach you how to use a date data type and so on and so forth. And then you will learn more or less a complete set of query, right? And to ensure the effectiveness of learning, the best way is to give you an exam specifically on this query stuff. But unfortunately, I don't have that much time in this particular semester to give you exam and feedback, and then we lose the opportunity to learn other good stuff. So I would dedicate the responsibility of learning to you, right? Make sure you are dig into the slide, not only 1, but 2. Right? So 2, you together, you have 150 slides. So you have slide number 2, part 2, to learn a pretty complete, SQL knowledge. And in the process, you will encounter error because our textbook is written in Microsoft SQL Server, and we are using the Oracle environment. So one last thing, you can do the same thing in the SQL developer environment, right? So the screenshot in this environment will work equally, but make sure you use the right connection to practice your SQL. I recommend using the UISACAD oracle.us.edu connection, right? So you can type in select statement, same select statement, SKU says department from SKU data, right? I'm only selecting 2 columns here, and you can run the script, and the result will be right here. If you select 4 columns, it will be 4. Let's try to add 1 more. Let's just try to add where. Oh, it's not camping. It's camping and climbing. I don't know what happened with the data set, but when department, where department is equal to camping, and this is case sensitive. So if you type in lowercase, uppercase, it might result in error as well. So we have only 2 rows select belong to department camping, right? So now with assignment 4 in front of you, it's your job to look into that learning process. Sorry, I have to cough a little bit more and drink some water. All right. So, any question about the problem? And I'll stop the recording here so that you know I don't over record.